Okay, the meeting is starting and it looks like we're live. Welcome everybody to podcast number 20 of Project SIP. We're really happy to have you guys all with us tonight.
The meeting is starting and it looks...
Had the delay on the other screen there. Everybody, welcome to our first inaugural Project SIP podcast on YouTube. We appreciate you all joining us tonight. I want to start off the podcast by introducing our new panelist, Anthony. Anthony, go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Anthony. I am an educator. My general political persuasion is that I have no confidence in the two-party system. I think that's my biggest conviction. And when he said our inaugural podcast, I thought he meant that we'd have this podcast every time Joe Biden was elected, but probably misunderstood.
Just a little bit, but that's okay. We'll give you a pass this time. Great. Well, let's jump right into it, guys. It's been a crazy couple of weeks, but I feel like lost in all of this, something that any other time in the world would have been pretty big news, is the fact that we just had a runoff election in Georgia that produced some pretty great results for the Democrats. And I'd like to go to Tyler for more on that.
So, I must eat my words, because in our State of the Election podcast, I said that Jon Ossoff would not win his seat. And everybody else thought that he was going to win. And I didn't believe it. But as of right now, Jon Ossoff beat David Perdue by just over a percent. Right now, looking at the numbers, it is about 1.2% in the lead for Jon Ossoff. And for Raphael Warnock, beat our wonderful Kelly Loeffler over there in Georgia by 2 points. It's just astounding how far politics in Georgia had moved so quickly. Even 2 months ago, saying that both of the Democratic candidates could win was unfathomable to me. So now it's a 50-50 split for the Senate that will be broken by Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. And it's just a precarious majority for the Democrats on that, because just one vote can change the tide on anything that they put up. So they need to make sure they build a good coalition and make sure everybody's on the same page. Now, I did mention in our State of the Election podcast that the Democrats need to get the same amount of turnout in some areas such as Savannah and Atlanta and Columbus. And they got pretty close to the same turnout. It was about 90% of the turnout that they got in November. But the Republicans did lose a lot of the turnout that they had from November, especially in some of the northern counties that they won pretty big, which is kind of what I was mentioning before. So great job for the Democrats to getting it out there and getting the word out and knocking on doors while the Republicans were trying to self-immolate for the last 2 months. And let's see where this takes us over the next couple of years, because it's going to be like this until 2022.
Thank you, Tyler. I wanted to ask a follow-up question to that. How do you feel, or how much weight would you put on what Stacey Abrams was able to accomplish in the state as far as getting those 2 senators elected?
Well, you can't deny that Stacey Abrams had a little bit, or even a lot of the factor of getting a lot of people registered or re-registered after Georgia had dumped a lot of people off the polls. Or the rolls of polls, I guess you could say, to sign up for voter registration. I'm glad that she got out there. She knocked on doors, like I said. She got people out there to vote. She got people energized, because as I have mentioned before, and I think a lot of people in this podcast have mentioned before, the Democrat at the top of the ticket wasn't exciting, and we needed people below the ticket to be exciting, to get people out there to drive the vote out. And so I do believe Stacey Abrams had done that, especially in Georgia and in around Atlanta.
Great point. Thank you. Vlad, I want to go to you for this next question here. Do you feel like what many consider to be a racist campaign ad by Purdue in the way that he enlarged John Ossoff's nose in one of the commercials? Do you feel like that had a negative effect on his campaign?
I do. I know he pulled the ad, but that ad to me spoke of 1930s Germany, because you would see a lot of caricatures of Jewish people with really pronounced, enlarged noses and stuff like that, looking like cartoon villains. And granted, this wasn't, quite on the same level as that. It played off that. So I think using, you can run an ad attacking someone's policies. You can run an ad attacking someone's character. You can run an ad attacking any number of things. When you run an ad like that, that basically channels like, the best of, or, the best of Nazi propaganda from back in the day, that speaks really poorly to a lot of voters. And, there's a lot of people out there who still have, decent enough morals, who will look at that and go, you know what? No, not doing it. So yeah, I think it hurt him.
And if you're trying to make an allusion to Nazis, that was pretty on the nose.
Oh.
Well, I mean, it as someone who studied like World War II and the Holocaust and that time of period pretty extensively, like seeing an ad like that, it just automatically drew parallels in my mind. Like it almost speaks to the Republican Party's outright embrace of fascist ideologies and fascist kind of tactics.
Thank you, Vlad. I want to go quickly to, by the way, great introduction to the podcast, Anthony. Real quick, I want to go to Amanda next. Go ahead.
So when Vlad was saying that, I was thinking to myself, we see a lot of anti-Semitism these days within GOP rhetoric. And even though they say they're all for Israel, and that's obviously a separate conversation, they usually are very quick to point to Jewish, rich, wealthy billionaires saying, oh, well, George Soros is funding you, or funding this, or paying the protesters. And that has its roots in anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish, stereotypes about wealth. And so seeing that Purdue did that in his ad was just kind of par for the course for the GOP these days in my mind.
I think, Amanda, you bring up an interesting point, but I think the GOP is pro-Israel, and I put pro-Israel in real air quotes, because I feel like they're using in a lot of ways, they're using Israel because they are the lone, almost like the lone country in the Middle East that they feel like, oh, is going to go and take care of the, the terrorist problem or what have you. So if it wasn't for that, I'm pretty sure the GOP wouldn't give two shits about Israel.
Well, yeah, and we see how many supposed conservatives care about blue lives this week. So
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Similar concept.
And we'll get to that one a little bit later in the podcast. But real quick, I want to go to Anna next. Go ahead.
I just think that it's really funny how Trump is the only one that can get away with sharing that type of hate. Like, what is it about this guy that he can literally say whatever he wants about anyone and no one gets upset, and yet this ad is out, everyone's upset? Like, it's just shocking to me.
I agree. I agree. The other thing I wanted to quickly bring up, Purdue isn't the only one who shared a very inappropriate attack ad. Kelly Loeffler actually shared an attack ad with Raphael Warnock's skin to actually darken. Now, I haven't actually seen the ad myself. Can anyone speak to that who has seen the ad? Or
Yeah, it's obviously darkened. It's taken from a video. I forget of a speech of his, and she's clearly, or whoever ran her campaign, clearly darkened his skin.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll have to check it out when I get a chance. But
and it's sad because she was also campaigning with members of the KKK, self-pronounced white supremacists. She probably got the idea for that ad from those people because it might help her win, or at least she thought that would help her win.
And it's almost in my mind. I'm sorry, Tyler. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought you were done.
No. The only thing I was going to say was it just proves that she just doesn't know Georgians. Yeah,
well, she's not a Georgian. And so I apologize again for interrupting. What I was saying is I don't even know if it was like a calculated, we're going to darken his skin to send this message. I think that's so part of their implicit bias and racism that my inkling is that whoever designed that campaign didn't think twice about it. That it was just, oh yeah, we just got to make him look bad. It's fine. Like, we're going to make him look darker. But I don't think it was like as calculated as kind of what you were thinking.
Kylan, do you agree with that?
I do. And I actually want to take a brief moment to expand on that. When we're talking about some of the racist dog whistles of Loeffler and Purdue, another thing that Kelly Loeffler made as a attack on Warnock was attacking his sermons, attacking the core of his faith, attacking the core of the Black church. So much so that a coalition of Black churches across Georgia wrote a letter for her to cease and desist those type of attacks. And I just, once again, just when you're talking about the GOP, I find the hypocrisy astounding and comical, because when Amy Coney Barrett was being, going through her confirmation hearings, the GOP preemptively went to their outrage and tears machine at the thought of any Democrat bringing up anything about her religion, yet they so cavalierly try to tear down Raphael Warnock's religion as an actual pastor, well-known, preaching the teachings of Christ and actually living and embodying them, instead of, the GOP and their, white Jesus, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, riding on a tank with an AR-15 and an eagle adorned to his arm.
Great, thank you, Kylan. Let's move on. Actually, we've got 2 new senators from Georgia now, 2 new Democrats, and we have a 50-50 split in the United States Senate. Good for the Democrats, not so great for the Republicans, obviously. I want to move on to the what some might call the main event of tonight's broadcast, which is the events of January 6th. I think it's fair to say we were all shocked by what happened that day. I know from my experience, I didn't get any work done that day. I was glued to my TV. It honestly kind of had the same effect for me as watching the events of 9/11 unfold in real time. You just it seems like the world stops, you can't think about anything else. So I want to ask an open question to the panel though. Do you believe that this was a coup? And I'll let anyone jump in on that.
No, it was an attempted coup. That's what it was. Mm-hmm. But also a really disorganized, unstructured attempted coup by multiple different factions and then people along for the ride.
I think it was just something that's been teetering and festering, and it wasn't necessarily a planned coup necessarily, but because once they got there, they didn't know what to do but LARP.
So the reason that I asked that is because there's actually been reporting coming out of I can't remember exactly what publication it was, but there's been reporting on this where they've actually said that certain congressmen were actually having some of the same people that actually showed up at the rally go on these little like reconnaissance missions. So that's the reason I ask if it was a coup and not an attempted coup.
It wasn't necessarily reconnaissance missions. You can do tours of the Capitol. So these people were just going on tours. They just happened to be a part of the group of people that stormed the Capitol. I don't necessarily. I believe that it would, if this was a coup, like a coup like we all think a coup d'etat is, this was a horribly organized one, a very loose one, and once they got there, they had no idea what to do with it. I do think that this was just it was just extraordinary to watch. I do think it was very wrong. The more I look at it, the more that I reflect on how I mean, obviously I know how I was feeling, but the more I reflect on how things were transpiring instead of just panicking in the time that it was going on Wednesday morning here, it just really feels like it was somewhat coordinated from the top, but nobody else got the message.
Okay. Interesting perspective there. Amanda, really quickly, and then I want to go to Jules.
So I don't think anything was really coordinated from the top. If you kind of looked at what people now have been putting together on, from different screenshots from the dark web and from Parler, there were individual groups planning various things, but there was no overarching plan. There was no unification of a plan. But some groups actually did have detailed plans with like diagrams of who sits where in the Senate. There were people who showed up with not just zip ties, but the zip ties specifically designed to handcuff people.
Yep.
There were people who were very organized when they show up. They knew where to go. Whereas there were definitely other people who were just like, oh, we're storming the castle. Let's go.
Yes, let's go.
Yeah, it's a revolution. Like that lady from Tennessee. Who got me.
Oh, Elizabeth.
So,
oh, she was glorious.
Bless her. But yeah, so she's not an organized insurrectionist. She's an opportunist in the moment. But the fact that there wasn't any unification with these mini factions, I think, is what made it break down. But you did have reports of Congress people saying, they knew I wasn't in my office, that I'm normally in this other area, and they were knocking down that door. How did they know I would be there? Like, that's what's disturbing, is there has to be some sort of, and I'm not trying to conspiracy theorize anything, but on some level, there may have been some inside information about where certain offices were.
So to that point, actually, I wanted to bring something up, and you guys may or may not have heard of this, but Lauren Boebert, who's a freshman congressman that just got sworn in, she actually was live tweeting throughout the whole thing. I can't remember what it exactly was that she said. It was something to the effect of the speaker is being moved from the chambers or something like that.
Yeah,
she was tweeting this in real time. This is insanity. Like,
and the day before the insurrection, on her Instagram page, she has pictures with at least 3 people that were there the next day.
Yep.
And like
then the day of, she tweeted, today is 1776 or something like that. I guess from my perspective, I don't buy that this was just some random event that just happened to happen. So anyways, I want to go to Jules next. You haven't spoken yet. Go ahead, Jules.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think that it was not entirely random. I think, as Amanda and Tyler said before, there was a conjoining of multiple different groups, and some of them had higher motivations than others. But people came with zip ties, and one of the only reasons that this mass group of fascist morons didn't make it into the Senate floor when there were still senators on there was because of the acts of Eugene Goodman, who led them away, and he brought them up another staircase away from the Senate floor, looked in, saw there were still senators. But I mean, make no mistake, these people were nearly two-thirds of the way to holding an actual coup. It could have easily become a hostage situation or a mass murder situation, because some of those people wanted to kill politicians. And I'm not even sure that they had really any distinguishment between whether those were going to be Republicans or Democrats. Probably Democrats preferred, but they were going after Pence too.
Yeah, hashtag hang Mike Pence was trending.
And there we were a hair's breadth away from having a much different outcome on this. And Eugene Goodman should be given a medal and like he's given money for the rest of his life. I mean, he saved the Senate. He saved, a co-equal House of Government.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Jules. I want to go to Vlad real quick, and then let's go over to Anthony. Go ahead, Vlad.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So I don't think it was a coup. It hadn't reached that level yet, because in order for it to be a coup, you have to actually take over government. This was a violent insurrection. Was there some organization? It definitely seems like it. Was it really well coordinated and well planned, like we see a lot of coups that have happened in other countries? No. Could it have been a hell of a lot worse than it was? Absolutely. I mean, they erected a gallows outside of the Capitol. You had, as I believe Amanda put it, you had people inside with flex cuffs. Like, they're not just zip ties you get from Home Depot. Like, these are legitimate wrist restraints that are used to, on suspects during arrest. So it could have reached that level. It absolutely could have reached that level. But I think at a point, these people basically became, they were kind of like the dogs that were chasing cars, where I don't think a lot of them thought that they were going to get as far as they did. And when they made it, it was kind of like, well, shit, we're in the chamber. What do we do? So we're going to take some selfies. We're going to take, Nancy Pelosi's podium. We're going to, defecate in in Schumer's office and smear it on the walls, and then we're going to call it a day, and hope that we're going to be able to go back home, go to our lives, and get into our trucks with Trump emblazoned on the side of it with guns. And now they're facing the consequences. So could it have been worse? Absolutely. Was it laughably bad now that it's over? Hell yeah.
Yeah, I go back and forth between thinking how poorly this was planned, and how laughable it is, to how laughable it is that like it was actually allowed to occur with how much we spend on our military budget every year. But that's neither here nor there. Anthony, let's go to you next.
Well, that was the perfect segue. I was interested in Tyler and Amanda's points. And they were talking about, it seems like if there was a plan, the plan was just to send in a lot of armed men with the presumption that democracy would prevail. And I thought that was fun, because we fought several wars on the exact same model.
Agreed. Let's go to Anna next. Go ahead.
Why is anyone surprised? Why? I don't.
I love you moved the mic.
Math.
Okay, so there's a few things that bother me. One, the fact that everyone is surprised by this. I don't know if I've just lost faith in my fellow Americans, or the fact that while I'm watching this, I'm literally thinking, that's the USA. That is so us, where we let, all these crazy people literally attack and perform terrorism, and everyone is just, it's peaceful protest. It's not peaceful protesting, it's literally domestic terrorism. No one wants to use this word, domestic terrorism. That's what it is. That's what we should be calling it. People are shocked that they got so far. Why are you shocked? These are white people. I'm sorry to throw race in there. White people doing exactly what they have been doing throughout our whole history, which is getting away with things that anyone else would have been shot and killed for. I hear people saying it's not as bad as it could have been. Okay, that does not excuse it. That does not excuse their behavior. It could have been worse. That does not excuse their behavior. We have people peacefully protesting for police brutality, and they're getting shot and killed by the police. So when these people are invading, and I'm not a lawyer, but I've read it in the Constitution where it says when you try to stop something like the election, that is terrorism, you literally can't die. I just can't understand why people are shocked, why people are just saying, oh, I'm so glad it didn't get as bad as it could have. I'm so glad, I'm like, whatever, dude. Literally, it shouldn't have got that far. The fact that it got that far, the police really, really did not do what they should have been doing. Let's just be honest. If it was me there, if it was KP, if it was another Hispanic or Black person there, we probably would have been shot. I don't understand why people are surprised. I don't understand why people are just so thankful that it was the way it was. The way that everything that happened to me, I'm not shocked. I hate that it happened. I love my country. I hate that it happened, but I'm not shocked. I'm not going to, I can't say or agree with anyone that says people are living the consequences of their action. No, you're not. No, they're not. There were thousands of people there, and there's only been, 30 arrests? No, people are not living with the consequences of their actions. They're not. If they would have been living with the consequences of their actions, the police would have been there. There would have been a lot more arrests. I'm not saying how people
There's
died.
over 100 now, Anna.
I was
Oh,
going
I'm
to say,
so
there's
sorry.
quite a big number that got arrested.
There's over 100 now.
Over 100.
There were
thousands of people there.
14,000 arrests. 14,000 were arrested during the BLM protests.
Okay,
Yeah.
over 100. Whoop-de-doo, let's throw a parade. The police is doing something, the FBI is doing something. Okay, my point is, thousands of people were there, over 100 arrests. It should have never gotten that bad. The police should have had a handle of it. And I'm very annoyed by this, very mad, because I know that there has been peaceful protest where more people have died, where more people have been arrested. But this is an act of domestic terrorism. And for some crazy reason, we let it get that far, because we did let it get that far. The fact that the police wasn't there, the fact that, the media is saying, oh, it's a coup, it was this. So, no, it's terrorism. Let's call it what it is, terrorism. And I'm just going to stop because I'm going to keep rambling about, and you guys are going to tell how annoyed I am by this.
And it wasn't some crazy thing. It wasn't some crazy thing. It was white supremacy.
Yeah. Agreed. Absolutely. Kylan, you got a tough act to follow on that one, but go ahead.
You know what? I loved it. I loved hearing Anna's passion, and she told the truth. I was at work. I was in San Francisco at my desk on a work conference call. And then I was on my phone. I started seeing things on my phone popping up, and I went to a dual screen and I started seeing everything collapse. And I couldn't work the rest of the day. Everybody in my office were all just stunned watching the carnage. And I was like, and the thing is, I was not surprised. I knew by the insightful language that he's been using since the election that it was stolen, that it was rigged, how people were being riled up. I knew, way back in the summer when Chris Ray went before Congress and said that white nationalism and white supremacist groups are the #1 terror threat to the homeland, I knew that something like this was going to happen. Now, me personally, I don't believe in coincidences. If it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And I completely feel that this, from the highest levels of government, was an inside job. Now that since we're dealing with the Trump administration, and every time they try to do an inside job for anything, it's normally comes up, bankrupt. It just normally comes up because they're morons. But let me just break it down a little bit. Number one, why weren't the National Guard given authorization when they were called in? They were not given the green light by the Department of Defense until 3 hours later, after the house has been ransacked. Why did the Department of Defense not give that authorization? Oh my God, because most of the Department of Defense leadership has been cleaned out and beforehand had been replaced with Trump sycophants. Number two, why? When you listen to James Clyburn said, hey, how did they know not to go to my regular office, but they went to an unmarked door where I would be. How did they know that? Or how did they know where an obscure meeting room in the bowels of Congress where they had the Electoral College certificates, how did they know to go and ransack that room? Fortunately, a smart staffer took those Electoral College ballots and took them with them when they fled so they weren't destroyed. But how did they know that? You know, when you talk about, you know, I know Tyler mentioned earlier that it's normal to do tours, but it's not normal to do tours right now because all public tours of the Capitol have been stopped because of COVID. But all of a sudden, these congressional GOP members decide all of a sudden now that they want to bring these unmarked groups to go and do tours of the halls of Congress. And all of a sudden, they seem to know where they're going. You know, when you have the pictures, when you have this guy, Ali, the right-wing guy saying, dropping by name, Paul Gosar, Mo Brooks, and another Republican congressman that he was converting with. There's reports that another GOP congressperson actually arranged and paid out of his campaign contributions for charter buses to have these insurrectionists come to the Capitol. There was a coordinated effort between the administration and some members of the House GOP to do this. And then when you talk about following rules, when they try to implement common sense safety to protect congresspersons going forward, you have idiots like Lauren Boebert and the idiot Marjorie Taylor Greene and some other people who don't want to walk through metal detectors, who walked past and forced their way past Capitol Police. You know, rules for thee, not for me. Republicans don't want to govern. Republicans don't want to follow the rules, and they get that right from their Lord and Savior, Donald John Trump. Okay, the rules don't apply. The rules only apply to suckers and losers that die in combat, according to our president. You know, so again, this was an inside job, in my opinion. I think as investigations go on over time, I think these investigations are going to last a number of months. And when the ball does drop, I'm telling you, there's going to be a lot of GOP congressmen that are going to be expelled and or arrested. Okay, this is sedition. This is insurrection. This is despicable and disgusting behavior by people who are supposed to be lawmakers. How can you be a lawmaker when you're a lawbreaker? This is disgusting.
This is the reason why I don't think that it's a big deal that there's only 100 people arrested right now, because it's going to happen. Their time is coming. There are people being put on the no-fly list because they were there. They were in the Capitol. They were vandalizing things.
By the way, can I just say this?
That's great and all, but sorry, that's great and all, but the fact that they made it that far says a lot about our security. Let me tell you, I lost my phone, and it took me 2 days to log into Facebook. 2 days. Okay, Facebook kept saying you need to do this, and I did it. Do this. 2 days. It took them a few hours to get into one of the most protected buildings in the country or in the world. That's ridiculous. I don't care. Put people on the no-fly list. Have them go to jail. More should have been done, and it should have been done faster. I'm sorry. There's nothing no one can say that's going to make me feel better about that.
Anna, I'm not disagreeing with you that more should have been done to prevent it from being this way. But when there are people that are at high levels of the government that wanted it to happen, that's why you get what you got. We have to clean up the mess, and it's going to take a while to clean up the mess.
And let's be real, the Capitol Police, you know, I feel like there would have been more arrests that day had they not been so undermanned.
Yes,
that's my main point. You know, then that's why, like when Tyler says that there are more arrests coming later, I agree with that. I think we're going to see that as the days and weeks go on. So
that was done on purpose, Alex. The was low on purpose. Another part of the inside job. The management of the Capitol Police, they you know, cops who were being interviewed said, "Why am I being sent home when we need reinforcements? Why would they send home? Why would they not make sure it was fortified?" And to Anna's point, and I'll see because I know Jules is next on the queue, but Anna is absolutely right. If this was a Black Lives Matter protest, they would still be mopping up the blood off the Capitol steps because they never would have made it inside. They would have gotten taken down on the steps or before. These people ransacked the Capitol, killed a police officer by hitting him in the head with a fire extinguisher. Went to
Blue Lives Matter.
To hang the vice president, okay, hang Mike Pence, and these people walked right out the door and went home and went to the airport. They walked out.
I wish I had that level of privilege. I'm just saying.
For sure. Jules, you've been waiting for a while. Let's go to you next.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with everybody, with Kylan and Tyler and Anna. Like, this shouldn't have fucking happened. There were 1,200 people, 1,200 state police or Capitol Police against 4, 5, 6,000 angry Trump cultists, and they were just overrun, armed. Yeah, armed, and they were overrun, and they had even been told that they should increase these numbers, and they refused to do so. So that's a huge issue. And when there was a peaceful BLM protest in front of the Capitol, there were crazy amounts of security. When there's a joint session of Congress for the State of the Union, it's like a goddamn fortress. There's no way, there's no reason why when the two bodies of Congress are in a building that they should not be protected in the same capacity, because they are a co-equal branch of government as the President of the United States. I mean, it's totally ridiculous. And another thing is, who cleans this up? Who cleans all of this shit up in the Capitol? Well, the janitorial staff, the service staff, and they're all people of color. So once again, we have a bunch of angry, misinformed white people trashing our governance and our seat of power, and people of color come in and they clean that shit up.
Yep.
So, and it's the other thing that's fucking disturbing about it is that more organized groups looked at that and they're going to think to themselves, well, that was really easy for them to do, and they didn't have any planning at all, and now they're planning.
I can agree with that, Jules. I can totally agree with that. But the thing about it is that the speech that Trump was having and where everybody was meeting was at the Ellipsis, which is closer to the White House. It's about a half a mile away from the Capitol. And at the end of Trump's speech, he basically told people to go to the Capitol to protest, because we need to take back our country. We need to stop the steal. We need to do all these things. So I feel like that got people going. I would say that the police were not in the right position because of that, because they weren't expecting people to be at the Capitol. Yeah, you could look at the whole entire thing about Parler, because I was on Parler. I follow a lot of conservative media on Twitter. I saw some of the things that they were talking about. But there wasn't any organized things about the Capitol. There was small things, like Amanda was saying, where there were some smaller groups that were doing it, but they weren't expecting 50 to 100,000 people show up on the Capitol and overwhelm the police that were holding back the barricades.
They weren't expecting it, but they were told that there might be.
But again, there's not the definite thing. Oh yeah, we're going to have 50 to 100,000 people show up. It's more of the smaller.
But if it had been a BLM protest that might end up at the Capitol, they would have had fucking 40.
They also didn't have 100,000 people. They had 20,000 people.
Okay, well, 20,000 people. So 20,000 people. But if it was a Black Lives Matter protest, that comes up to a different bias about our country than what I think people are thinking of. And we saw this with Gretchen Whitmer in the protests about open the state of Michigan, open the state of California here in Sacramento, where groups of white people, no matter how big or small they were, can go up to police and protest and yell and scream and do what they want to do, and nothing gets done. But if it was a group of Black and brown people, they would then be pushed back or tased or thrown tear gas, and then more cops would show up very quickly. The whole entire thing about it is that is an inherent bias of our country, that Black and brown people are dangerous. It doesn't matter what we're doing or what we're screaming about, or if we're walking around with a gun just like a white person would do. We're just dangerous because of that. I do want to get that point out. I also want to say that that I'm losing my train of thought with this because I'm getting very passionate about it because it is a big deal. It did happen. We need to make sure it stop. We take care of it from this point forward. But we also got to think of it this way. There wasn't a lot of people there at the Capitol. They weren't expecting it. Once we started getting more police there, once the National Guard was finally released by Vice President Mike Pence, once the National Guard from Virginia and Maryland were there, we saw similar things with tear gas and flash bombs and things like that going off, just like it was a Black Lives Matter protest.
So, Tyler, can I ask you a quick follow-up question, and then I want to go to Anthony next. The question I have for you is, so the Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund resigned as a direct result of these protests. Do you think this is on him, or do you think there's a lot more blame to go around?
Oh, there's a lot more blame to go around. He is going to be the scapegoat because it was his police force. But as I said before, and I know Amanda had mentioned it, Jules had mentioned it, Anna had mentioned it, it comes from people above him, but he's going to be the fall guy. And that's the reason why he was one of the first people to resign, because of this.
Great. Thank you. Anthony, you wanted to jump in. Let's go to you next.
Yeah. So we saw these guys have a go at part of the executive branch and at the legislative branch. We're all thinking that there will be more arrests in future, people will be charged, etc. I wonder if we'll be any happier with the performance of the judicial branch. Will we have convictions anywhere proportional to the arrests? That's something I don't know. And something Tyler said gave me an idea, which I forgot since then.
No worries, no worries. Hey,
it happens to all of us.
for all of our viewers here tonight, I just want to say one quick thing before we move on. Does Anthony not have the greatest fucking speaking voice you've ever heard in your life? Like, I just got to get that out there, man. Like, I love the way your voice sounds, but that's neither here nor there. Let's move on.
You're very kind.
I got you, man. This is another open question I've got for the panel. Why hasn't there been a congressional briefing on January 6th yet? Anyone is open to answering that question.
Because they've been busy impeaching and dealing with a lot of other things. I think we will have congressional briefings after the fact, after the inauguration, if at all, but they're not going to do it in the immediate aftermath and trying to figure out who to blame.
They've also been trying to, yeah, they're also trying to clean up the Capitol and get it back in working order, putting back panic buttons and stuff like that. So they have other things to be worrying about right now. They'll be briefed about it later.
Fair enough. Let's go to Amanda. You're up next. Go ahead.
So I wanted to first touch on the last thing Anthony brought up about the judicial system and the justice system. And a lot of things I've been seeing online are people being like, why are these people getting arrested and when they're domestic terrorists, but they're only being charged with unlawful entry, which is a Class B misdemeanor where the most you can get is 6 months in jail. It's the lowest level you can get.
Jail?
No, in just a regular like federal jail prison situation. So a lot of these people are being charged with low-level misdemeanors first so that they can get arrested. And it's easier than to get them in custody. And then I highly suspect we are going to see grand jury indictments for major felonies down the road. And this is a pretty common tactic. You arrest on a lower charge first and then indict later on something greater. We saw that with Amber Geiger, the police officer who murdered Botham Jean. It's a pretty standard thing. And then we're also going to see, the process play out like it did with the college admissions scandal. You will see some people plead out for low sentences really early, and the people who fight it are going to get slammed. So there's that. And then I wanted to touch on the issue of the officers and the police response. like obviously the chief of police is, you know, the one who's had to resign, but he made 6 different requests for backup, for support from the National Guard before and during the insurrection. And I think one of the things that played into this was something that I think Pentagon and House Sergeant of Arms Paul Irving alluded to, and that was they were fearful of bad optics. You know, there was this whole summer of protests against police brutality, and obviously that was police brutality against people of color, against unarmed individuals. Most of the time, you know, there's no change when you see those protests. And I think they thought, well, it's bad optics if we have people out there in riot gear. Look at all the backlash we got this summer. And so I think that played into a lower response. I think that was an aspect of it. And it's just kind of mind-boggling that that's the moment they decide to scale things back when there's going to be a giant Trump rally full of majority white people. It didn't make sense that that's the moment they decide to care about optics.
Good point.
Thank you, Amanda, for bringing back my point that I was going to make.
You're welcome. Yeah, and people are like, oh God, it's like, but it was like so peaceful. They didn't expect the violence, and it's like they had intelligence on these sort of things. They just didn't take it seriously, and you end up with cops reporting that they were sent home early when they should have been there through the afternoon. You have images of cops being attacked by these people. Cops who were tased, cops who were dragged. I think there was that cop who has his head being smashed in between a door or an elevator. And I just read an article about cops saying they could hear people say, let's kill him with his own gun. Like, and this is not stuff that comes out of the blue. Like, I think I think like, oh, we didn't know that there was going to be that many people. I don't know if that can be the final say on whether or not that's a good excuse, because this isn't the first time Trump rallies have gotten violent.
I don't want to hear shit from the right about Blue Lives Matter. They fucking forever forfeit that right. They better kick that shit to the curb. We
already know what Blue Lives Matter was for.
It means black people shut the fuck up.
Exactly.
Yep. It's shut up and play basketball.
And I don't.
It's
shut up and dribble.
Yeah.
Shut up and dribble. But I also don't want to hear about being the party of law and order, because.
Yeah, Tyler.
Oh my gosh. And when I'm going to use the term those people, referring to Trump supporters,
yes.
When those people talk about criminal immigrants or criminal this, or those people are criminals, or the person, the black person who's shot and killed by police, oh, he had marijuana 5 years ago. Like, criminals. Yeah. Those people are criminals. Mm-hmm. They're criminals. But they don't
Al-Qaeda.
They don't see themselves that way. They are the saviors. They are pure. They are white. They are conservative Christians. It's all bullshit.
Gotta love that privilege, huh, Amanda?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't exist, remember? They don't believe it exists.
No, they're oppressed.
They're totally oppressed.
I want to go to Anna next, and then I want to move on to the next question here. Go ahead, Anna.
So I didn't know. I'm gonna be just straightforward. I'm one of the people complaining about why are these people not being charged with terrorism? They should have been charged with terrorism. I will say, I have said it multiple times to multiple people. So Amanda, thank you so much for explaining how that works, because I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how it works. But I am one of those people. I also think that it's interesting how they're worried about how the police is going to be viewed when it's white people protesting. I'm just going to be honest. There is nothing no one can say that will make this okay, that will make me feel safe in my own country when I peacefully protest. So I feel now like if I protest, and I don't know about anyone else, I'm going to say me. I feel like when I protest, my life is in danger. But obviously, if I were to protest with Trump supporters and I were to pretty much become a terrorist and invade one of the most important buildings in the country, my life wouldn't have been in danger. So now it's good for me to know that if I were white and a terrorist, I would be safe. But the fact that I'm brown and I'm not a terrorist and I'm a law-abiding citizen, I'm not safe. So it really sucks that, one of the most important things that we have as an American, which is peaceful protesting, I'm not safe because I'm brown and I'm not a terrorist and I'm not a Trump supporter. It really sucks. And I don't like to act like the victim because I'm not. I work hard and pay my taxes like other people. But
Like
it
the
really
president.
sucks. Yeah, it really sucks that the color of your skin in 2021 allows you to commit a crime that a while ago you would have been shot. And when I say a while ago, I mean last summer. It really sucks. And it also sucks, and I want to bring it down a little bit. That was, I want to say maybe 10, so a while ago. I actually got a tour of the White House. I went in like the day before. My auntie got tickets. I was able to go into the White House within 24 hours. It was really a cool experience. People used to have picnics on the lawn. It was really cool. It made me feel like this is my country. I can interact with the White House. It controls how the whole country is ran. Everything's coming from here. I felt like an American. But with everything going on, now at the White House, you can't have picnics on the lawn. If you want to do a tour, it takes, I think, weeks in order to be able to get a tour. I can see that happening with Capitol Hill now. And it really sucks that the buildings that represent our history, the buildings and the people that we should be in touch with, they're getting further and further and further away from us, but closer and closer to the billionaires, closer and closer to corporations, because they have the opportunity to go and speak to the people that represent us. So it really sucks that I want to say a few bad apples, but that wasn't a few bad apples, that a whole group of terrorists are ruining for the rest of us.
So Anna, you mentioned domestic terrorism, that they should be charged with domestic terrorism. And you want to know what's messed up? Domestic terrorism it's not a crime.
It's not codified.
There is no federal crime for domestic terrorism. It's defined, but you can't be charged with domestic terrorism. It doesn't exist. It probably should, but sorry. I think I muted myself for a second. It probably should, but it doesn't exist. There is a definition of domestic terrorism that I think fits here. It's under 18 USC 2331 subsection 5. And there are 3 additional subsections there, A, B, and C. And I think that B2, little 2 I's, applies the most. And it says the term domestic terrorism means activities that appear to be intended to influence the policy of a government by intimidation or coercion. And then subsection 3 little I says, or to affect the conduct of a government by mass destruction, assassination, or kidnapping. So I think if that were to be codified as a crime, there are definitely people who participated in the insurrection on the Capitol on January 6th who would fall into, actually attempting to influence policy or government by intimidation and coercion, and even attempted kidnapping or attempted assassination, because just because they didn't make it to Mike Pence doesn't mean that they are innocent of attempting to kidnap him or anything like that, because an attempted crime is an attempt because some outside intervening act stops you. And
that's what I read. So to me, it's like, there has to be something. There's no way that if this would have happened anywhere in the world, like if we would have gone to Nicaragua, where my family and I are from, and we would have tried to do this to any building that's government owned, like we would have been shot, like right then and there. So to me, it's like, this is terrorism. Like, is this not English? Is this English? Am I just not understanding English correctly? Am I not reading this correctly?
Yep.
Like, is it me? Because I read the same thing that you just read. I think it's terrorism. I didn't know that it wasn't a crime. I thought you can get hung for that, but I guess not.
No. Yeah. And I really do think we're going to see some, or at least I hope we're going to see some major felony charges along those lines, because just very quick example before we get to the next person. I had a client who was charged with attempted bank robbery, and all he did, he had a ski mask on, he was ready, he had his little BB gun hiding in his coat jacket, but he got out of his car and he took a couple of steps towards the bank, changed his mind and turned around. And he never attempted to go through the doors, even though the people saw him coming and locked it. He never tried to break in. He never hurt anybody. He never harmed anybody. And that was, in the eyes of the law, he was still convicted. And so you have people coming with the flex cuffs, with guns, with diagrams of places. They know where, Representative Clyburn's office is, or his like secret off, not secret, but like not his normal office. And you have people chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," "Where's Pelosi," all this stuff. I think that's, there are some attempted major crimes there, and you can be convicted of that.
And they should be.
Go ahead, Anthony.
Well, I was very surprised. I didn't know that domestic terrorism isn't a federal crime. And I thought, how could that be? And then I remembered that it would seem that in this case, Congress brought it on themselves because it's their business to pass laws for important federal crimes. I don't know about anybody else. I thought that we became especially aware of terrorism some time ago, and that we were funding a number of bureaucracies for that reason. But either way, I am not extraordinarily surprised on this count either. One amazing thing about the attack on the 6th was that it made Congress look sympathetic, when for about 40 years, they've had almost always a supermajority of people who don't like the way that they are doing their job. I thought a lot about legitimacy in preparing for this debate, and one question that I can't answer is, if almost nobody likes the way that the will of the people is being exercised, then Congress should have passed a law against domestic terror if they wanted to stop people from doing domestic terror. I guess that's as far as I can draw a conclusion there.
Go ahead, Vlad.
Well, I mean, first off, Anthony, I don't, just to respond real quick, I don't think Congress has really exercised the will of the people for a really, really long time. The issue is, lobbying and all that's been happening. But I think also I wanted to bring it back to the response of law enforcement to kind of the protests, and I think that it really illustrates the issue with not granting Washington, D.C. statehood, and is that they don't have a lot of the resources and a lot of the options that some of these other governors have. Like the mayor of D.C. would essentially be a governor of a state if they had statehood, and they would have their own National Guard. They would have other resources that they could potentially deploy without relying on neighboring states, which is what happened. And then, you had Donald Trump dancing and drinking Mai Tais in his bunker. So you had to have Mike Pence, who was ushered out of, the House chamber, call in the National Guard as an emergency. So, that's like, if you have, you grant DC statehood, it helps with some of these issues. I don't think this would have gotten so out of hand so quickly if that were to happen.
But I think they knew that they had that disadvantage turning to their advantage for that, and that they had time to be able to just let people do what they were wanting to do.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Anna. But unmute yourself first.
Yeah, hold on. I will be one of those people. You know what? I just feel like this whole conversation, you guys are going to see the ugly side of me. I'm not sympathetic whatsoever. I can't be. I'm sorry. And the reason I'm not sympathetic is because we have had so many school shootings where children, okay, children have had to hide and have lost their lives. I cannot and will not be sympathetic to adults who control the law, who control so much that they had to run for their life one time. I'm sorry. Yes, they represent us. Yes, whatever. I love and respect them, sure, whatever. Even though I don't know them. But I cannot be.
Wow.
Huh?
You're too kind.
I am too kind. Like, well, yeah, sure. But I cannot be sympathetic when I know children have grown up with fear in their life, where they don't feel safe going to school every single day, where they know that someone can come into their school and shoot them. I cannot be sympathetic for them because I know parents send their children to school, sometimes wondering, will I see my child again today? Will my child come back today? I just refused, and I don't want to be like that horrible Christian, but I refuse to be sympathetic for people who don't deserve my sympathy. Those that deserve it are children who go to school in fear, are those teachers who die protecting their those children, the parents who lose their children, and the brothers and sisters, the siblings who grow up without their brother or their sister. Those are the people that deserve my sympathy. Adults that control the law, that have allowed this to happen during the last year, they don't deserve an ounce of sympathy. I'm sorry, they don't. And anyone who says they do, I will just laugh in their face. I will, because there are more severe problems that deserve our sympathy, that deserve our time. They don't.
I just want to say real quick before we move on here, we've got a lot of Anthony and Anna fans in the chat, so I just want to let you know we see you up there. So
we would have more. We would have more Amanda fans if the moms were here.
That's true. There aren't many moms on YouTube, so Amanda.
But I mean, our moms.
That's accurate.
Quick point to Amanda, and then Vlad, and then we're moving on.
Yeah. So, Anna made a really great point about, school children and school shootings. And one of the things I read online this week that was kind of a gut punch, but also like a truth bomb, was Pelosi's staffers knew how to hide from the insurrectionists because of their experiences growing up in a generation where school shootings are so fucking, pardon the French, common. They knew to lock the doors and turn off the lights. And that's not okay that's that normalized. It's not.
And these motherfuckers are bitching about having to go through a metal detector when these high school students and elementary school students go through it every day, and they want to bitch about going through a metal detector. Shit.
I think Representative Tlaib said this exact same thing. She said children in my district have to do that at high school.
Suck it up, Buttercup.
Mm-hmm. I think that's exactly what she
said. Go
ahead,
Vlad.
I'm just gonna echo what Kylan just said. That was kind of my point, was that there's zero sympathy, because these people had to hide in their offices for a couple hours from armed insurrectionists that were, they had a chance to quell this type of rebellion. They impeached this orange dipshit a year ago. Mitch McConnell said, yeah, screw that. They could have done something about it. They chose not to. And, now they get a taste of what my nieces go through on a daily basis. They got a taste of what my future son's going to have to, go through unless things change drastically. And you know what? I see these people, bitching and complaining and throwing little hissy fits about having to go through a metal detector. What's your fucking point? I have to go through a metal detector if I want to go to a hockey game. I have to go through a goddamn full body scan if I have to go take a flight, because they think that all of a sudden I'm going to take out, 5 vials of chemicals in a Bunsen burner and start mixing a bomb on my goddamn tray table. Like, are you kidding me? Deal with it, you bunch of pieces of shit. And if you don't want to fucking deal with this reality that is the case for millions of people in this country, pass some fucking laws.
All right, parents, I think it's time for your kids to go to bed. We got a lot of swearing going on, but yeah.
Hey, we're on
demonetize,
YouTube now.
exactly.
We're on YouTube now.
We're yeah, we're done, guys. There's no way we're making money on this ever.
YouTube has parental controls. Facebook does not.
That's true. That's true. But listen, what company is going to want to sponsor us after what Vlad just did?
I think a lot of them. I think a lot of
Metal
them.
detector
People need people that can
manufacturers.
speak the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
Alex, I implore you not to start a Project SIP swear jar because I would go broke in a week.
I would also go for
there goes baby Vlad's college fund.
Seriously.
There's our advertising fund right there.
Oh, I got
All right,
Amanda.
folks, let's move on to the next topic here. And this is an interesting one, actually. I was looking forward to this one. And the question is, did Trump and Rudy Giuliani incite this mob? And I want to read you off a few quotes, and then I'll have you guys get in. I actually want to have Amanda jump in first on this one. So the first quote is from Rudy: "Let's have trial by combat." That's number one. And then a couple Trump quotes from that same rally: "Be there, be wild." The next one was, "We're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. And we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength and you have to be strong." Quote number 4: "When you catch somebody in a fraud, you are allowed to go by very different rules. So I hope Mike has the courage to do what he has to do. And I hope he doesn't listen to the rhinos and the stupid people that he's listening to." Quote number 5: "We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore." So my question, and I'll go to Amanda for this one, there's a specific Supreme Court case that deals directly with this topic right here. So I want to ask Amanda, by the legal definition, did Trump and Rudy Giuliani incite violence?
That depends on how you're defining it under the law, because are we talking about a criminal act? Are we talking about an impeachable act? Are we talking about something?
Let's assume criminal act. Let's assume criminal act for now, and then we'll get to impeachment later.
And
Best
are
lawyer
you
answer ever?
Oh yeah, well, no, but for real, because there's a lot of nuance. And are you asking about specifically insurrection, meaning violence, or are you asking, did he incite imminent lawless action?
So then I guess first and foremost, just because I've got it written down here, and I really wanted to get into this specific court case, Brandenburg versus Ohio is a very specific Supreme Court case that I know a lot of law students study. So let's go by that definition first, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Sure. And it's not just a lot of law students, it's every law student, unless they failed out before they got to constitutional law.
Thanks, Amanda. Okay.
Literally every law student studies this case because it's one of the few exceptions to the First Amendment. And so long story short, this guy named Brandenburg was a big KKK guy. He had a rally. He was really upset about what he felt was government discrimination against white people. And at the rally, he made several references to what he called revengeance against Black people, Jewish people, the government. And
by the way, is revengeance an actual word?
It is not.
Okay.
But he basically advocated for what we in the law we would call future violence, or the potential for future violence. And he announced plans for a march on Washington that would take place sometime later on the 4th of July. I don't remember exactly when his rally was, but it was far enough in time that it was not imminent. And so basically he sued when he was convicted of a crime for essentially inciting violence. He appealed his conviction all the way up to the Ohio Supreme Court, and he lost. And then the ACLU decided to represent him, and they went all the way to the Supreme Court, and he won, and it was a unanimous opinion. And so basically, the standard that has come out from Brandenburg is basically called kind of like a clear and present danger test. It's also known as the Brandenburg test, and it's a 2-part test. 1, it applies to speech that is directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action, and 2, the speech must actually be likely to incite or produce such action. And I've seen a lot of different things online, people saying, oh, well, this doesn't apply for Brandenburg with Trump. He's going to win because of the fact that he didn't specifically advocate for anything specifically violent. He could have been talking in a symbolic sense about fighting, about being strong. And I think in the one sense, they're right if the law he's accused of violating has to do specifically with violence. But I kind of agree with another aspect of the argument that I've seen, which is focusing on the words imminent lawless action. Did he incite imminent lawless action versus specifically violence? And I think there is a strong argument to be made that he did, because obstructing the operations of Congress is a crime. And it's not like he was saying, just go and be loud outside of the Capitol. That's kind of not what he was implying. Stop the steal, make Mike Pence do the right thing. All of that rhetoric was not necessarily, I think, pushing violence. I think it was pushing extreme pressure to obstruct Congress. And it was imminent because it wasn't like days or weeks later. It was like, we're marching. And in fact, we're marching in the middle of the speech. And
we're walking,
we're going to walk to the Capitol. We're going to do this, be strong, fight. And then I think Rudy is definitely more in the lines of inciting violence because he specifically says trial by combat. Mm-hmm. Like that's more.
And he stole that line from Game of Thrones, by the way. Of
course he did. And obviously, like, if they were to charge these men with crimes for this, it would still be really, really hard to convict them because the standard is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It's really high. I think if you want to talk more about the impeachableness of it, that I think is more likely.
I agree with Amanda that they're not going to get charged with anything. I mean, because pretty much anybody who was up on that stage, from Donald Trump Jr. to Kimberly Guilfoyle to
Madison Cawthorn,
all these people could have failed the Brandenburg test at one point or another. I mean, Madison Cawthorn is talking in December about basically coming up with a civil war and everything like that. So it's not going to happen. It's a fever dream that everybody would like to say is going to happen. You're going to see.
Wait, specifically what's going to happen?
Right. That's what I was going to say is that Rudy Giuliani or any of these people that were up on that stage were going to be led away in handcuffs because of it. It's just not going to happen.
But so I guess the question becomes, and Amanda might have addressed this already, but they don't actually need to be crimes in the legal sense to be impeachable. So do you think this is impeachable is my next question.
Well, I mean, it could potentially be impeachable, but, there's not much time to do that. So I don't think that's going to be the case. And the only person that could be well, I guess you could say Madison Cawthorn could be impeached for it, but nobody's really going to go after him for it, I don't think.
So can we just clarify real quick, what did Madison Cawthorn actually say?
Go ahead, Amanda. What were you going to say?
No, unless I missed something, I don't think members of Congress can be impeached. They can be
that's what I was going to say. I don't, because he's the only one that's in a public office. I mean, that's the only person I can think that he could.
He can be censured. He can be censured, expelled, and he can, be voted out by his constituents. So, but impeachment is reserved for federal judges, the president, group.
Yeah,
and just so our audience knows, what is required to actually expel a sitting congressman?
That I don't know.
It takes a lot.
It has to do with. I think it's a 2/3 majority vote. That feels right because that's usually what it is for big things like constitutional amendments or
a pretty hefty check and balance. I know that much. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's got to be 2/3. I don't know.
Yeah. But it has to be after a censorship.
Yeah. Anthony, you had a quick question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering from Amanda, is it typical in this kind of Brandenburg test to only consider his most recent utterances? Or like suppose this KKK gentleman had been talking for months about violence, which would happen in the future, but then the speech he made right before the violence had been about Cocoa Puffs or something. Would they not admit the buildup?
So I'm going to analogize this to self-defense. So because we use the word imminent both with this issue and with self-defense. What is imminent harm or danger of harm? When do you get to act in self-defense? And there are a lot of states, including California, where if you actually do have a history of someone being violent or threatening you or threatening other people and you're aware of it in advance, you're allowed to act more quickly in self-defense and with greater force. You're allowed to perceive what imminent means differently. I don't know if that is going to apply with incitement, because it's not about what has actually happened. It's about what they are kind of promoting and the likelihood that it might happen. I haven't done a lot of research on cases where people have been convicted and lost on a defense of the First Amendment. Or let me rephrase that. I haven't done research into the cases where somebody was not convicted of something that was criminalized under this exception to the First Amendment. I haven't done research into that, but my gut is that they're not going to be able to use the pattern, especially since the pattern still doesn't incite specific insurrection or specific violence. And it really is going to be focused on the imminence of it and the likelihood that it would happen. I think a better thing to look at is, was he trying to incite lawless action that wasn't violent? And was it imminent? Yes. Was it likely to happen? I think that the answer to that is yes, not in necessarily a criminal law context, but certainly at a lower threshold, which impeachment is at a lower threshold.
Did that answer your question, Anthony? Or
Yes.
I hope it did. I don't actually know if there's a legal ruling on admissibility of prior statements or prior bad acts in
Maybe
that
we'll all have
particular
occasion to
context.
find out.
Perhaps we will.
now that Anthony has officially canceled Cocoa Puffs, let's move on to the next topic here. So I guess the next thing I want to get to is, we all know, I mean, we were all pretty young when it happened, but 9/11 was the last time the country was really like kind of brought together in a moment of unity and patriotism and stuff like that. Do you feel like the events of January 6th have the ability to bring us closer together as a country, and maybe like unite those on the left and those on the right again? And I'll leave this as an open question. Go ahead, Kylan.
No.
My answer, clear as day, is, as of right now, absolutely not. Right now, we still can't agree that the sky is blue. Right now, we still have half the country that believe the election was stolen. Right now, we still have open white supremacists and insurrectionists actively plotting different ways to kidnap, kill, torture, maim, and murder people. Absolutely not. The only thing that's going to be united right now, I think, is some people are going to be united in their disgust of what's going on. The thing is, going back 20 years to when 9/11 happened, it was a unifying thing for the country, because at least 20 years ago when 9/11 happened, we could actually agree on reality. Right now, if another 9/11 happened, which kind of is actually what's happening every day, because of 9/11's worth of Americans are dying every day, we would say that 9/11 was an inside job. We say 9/11 was done by Antifa. We say 9/11 was done, by the Chinese. We say it was a hoax, that it was.
Technically, people called it an inside job back then too.
Yeah, but it was mainstream. Right now, when you got QAnon and bullshit that's mainstream, there is no sense of reality right now, because we can't even agree on a sense of reality. So how can we unify as a country in any way that's tangible if we can't even unify on a simple set of basic realities and facts?
Anna, what do you think?
Yeah, I also think the fact that I don't know how to say this without contradicting what I've said before, is the fact that when 9/11 happened, it was people that didn't look or sound like us that were from other countries, versus now where it's what quote unquote America looks like that's committing that terrorism, because to be frank, like, I travel the world, and when I tell people I'm from the US, they're like, really you are? Okay, I guess I don't look American. But so to answer the question, no, I don't think um, the events that happened can unite us because, like KP said, there's a lot of things that are dividing us right now. Common sense, for one. So no, I don't think it's something that can unite us, and I don't think it will be something that can unite us. I think what it's doing is actually dividing us even more. Those of us that have common sense, and those of them who think that sorry, but those people that think that behavior is appropriate. You know, a lot of people, like KP said, will agree on understanding that that behavior is not okay, and then there will be people who will try to justify that behavior. Like I know a lot of people who want to turn around and say, "Oh, well, you said protesting for Black Lives Matter is a constitutional right and it's free speech and blah blah blah. So this applies to them too." No, I don't think it will unite us because I don't think people understand how severe those actions were, um, and how the fact that a lot of people have gotten away with that. That behavior is not appropriate either. So the fact that people are getting away with it is not okay. So instead of uniting us, I think it is actually dividing us.
Now, I could say this in traveling across the world. A lot of people do say, "Oh, you're from America? I can't believe you're from America," because what people see on the news, um, or what they see on the internet is not people like
Yeah.
us hanging out and being able to talk to each other and have a conversation. They see a lot of divisiveness and a lot of yelling and uh, a lot of guns and a lot of America.
Yeah.
So because that's what's on the news. I mean, they don't know that there are regular people. I mean, there are regular people that have guns that aren't out there with the gun rack and touting it and going around acting all crazy with it. There are people that are just like
Normal.
them. They're normal.
Yeah.
I mean, what we can call normal right now. Um, as 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 far as the question at hand, is this something that is going to bring us together or divide us like 9/11? The night of, I kind of felt that it was going to bring us together. The night of and on January 7th. Um, since then, I kind of feel a little bit more like Kylan does in that there's just so many different realities going on out there. As Kellyanne Conway would say, there's alternative facts out there. I mean, you aren't actually seeing what you saw happen. But I mean, a majority of people in America, I mean, a large majority, I would say 70 to 80% of people saw that and are coming together and saying that this is wrong. And then there's that small 10 to 20% that are like, yeah, this was okay. This is what I wanted. And there's going to be some people in the middle that just don't care one way or the other. They weren't paying attention. They were hiding under a rock or whatever. There is going to be that. But I would say yes and no, that yes, a majority of people look at that and say, this is wrong. We don't want this in our country. We don't want things like this to happen again. And then there's going to be that small majority, that small minority, I'm sorry, that I think it's okay.
You know what really sucks though? That a lot of Americans believe that those actions are wrong, but I guarantee you, in 4 years when we have to vote again, or in 2 years, everyone's gonna forget because something bigger and something worse is gonna happen.
I hope not.
I hope not either, but I'm pretty sure.
Well, Tyler, I think you make a very interesting point, but I was going to ask, a similar follow up question to Anna, and I have another point that I want to make also, is that how many of those people who do want to come together, on both sides, are going to keep that same mentality beyond 3 months? Because I think we've learned very I think we learned a painful lesson over the last 4 years that Americans tend to have the attention span of goldfish. But back to Alex's original question, like, do I think this is going to bring us together like 9/11 did? No, I really don't. I think it's exactly what Anna said. On 9/11, we were attacked from the outside.
Mm.
On Pearl Harbor, we were attacked from the outside. The U.S. mobilized, and during Pearl Harbor, we mobilized, went into World War II, beat the crap out of Japan and Germany, and here we are. 9/11, we unfortunately started a horrendous war on terror. Thank you, George Bush. But we came together as a country. Right now, I don't see that happening. And I think the reason, I had a small sliver of hope that it might, but all that hope was dashed when I woke up the next morning and saw that 147 Republicans still objected to the results of the election. And if that's going to happen, like, the only way we could have come together from this is if they said, you know what, this was partisan posturing. There was no election fraud. Joe Biden is the president elect. Donald Trump is lying to you. We're moving on as a nation. Then maybe we could have healed. Maybe we could have moved on. But the fact that that many of them still objected, there's still this voter fraud bullshit being out there, being pushed by politicians, conservative media outlets, and you name it. It's just not going to happen. Like, we're not coming together.
It's funny because I was thinking of how to say that, where you're like, we were attacked from the outside. I'm like, wait, how could I say that so quickly? You literally said that so fast. I appreciate. That's what I meant. We were attacked from the outside. This time it was internal domestic terrorism.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for
no problem.
reading my mind.
I knew where you were going with this, because that was the point. As soon as that question was asked, that was where I wanted to go with it. So thank you for starting the conversation there.
I appreciate you having the ability to read my mind. Thank you.
I got you.
So about 70% of Republicans that were polled believe that the election was stolen in some way, shape, or form. There's no evidence to support that. There's no reason to really understand why that they think it does. Why they think it was.
Dead people.
Look, I mean, who cares about dead people? There's no evidence to support it. There's no evidence to support it, but the only evidence they have, the only thing these people are going off of is the fucking nightly news talking head, like, fascist people on Fox News and Donald Trump himself. And of course, Fox News is just parroting the policies and the bigotry of Donald Trump. So that's all these people watch, and that's all they understand, and that's how they're getting their information. So of course they don't know that there is no evidence of voter fraud, because they're being told every night, constantly, that the election was stolen. So how can there be unity if there's one group of people that are seeing an algorithm presented by Google that reinforces their incorrect information? They go onto the news that they rely on, and that tells them incorrect information. And they have their president that they love a little too much telling them that the election was stolen. They have no outside reference of what else is going on in this country, because all they're seeing is a series of incorrect information that's purposefully given to them. And so, I mean, 70% of the Republican voters, that's about 30% of the country. I mean, that's a lot of people. And how are we supposed to come together if 30% of the country decides that what's real isn't real? And they don't even understand that that's not real. They have no concept of that's not real. To them, that's the only thing that is real, because that's the only thing that makes sense to them, because that's the only thing that keeps being said to them, because they have no outside resources to understand that it might not be true. And they're not either educated enough or savvy enough to look beyond what they're being told by Facebook and Fox News and their God Emperor Donald Trump. And we also have this Trump cult sort of thing, this cult of personality that's not that dissimilar from the fascist cult of personality of the 30s, like Mussolini and Hitler and I forget the leader of Spain, but still this sort of cult of personality. Franco, thank you, Francisco Franco, who created this cult of personality and perpetuated a series of lies and had a media base that would perpetuate those lies. And yeah, in 2001, Fox News existed, but it wasn't nearly to the extent of propaganda that it is now. And so we're not going to get a situation now where we're all going to come together when something big happens, because too many people are being tricked into believing lies, and this is a dangerous thing. You know, we don't really have a counter for this right now, and it's worrisome.
Well, even if you share the truth with them and you show them the facts, they just don't want to believe it.
Right. They don't want to believe it. But there's also, they've been indoctrinated. But the fact that they've been allowed to be indoctrinated, that there was never a counter to it, that we haven't been able to do anything, and that these news companies don't give a shit whether or not they're spouting lies and people are believing them, and then it's causing violence. They don't really care about that, because what they care about is their bottom line, the numbers on their piece of paper that show, oh, Fox News is profitable, and it's profitable because we keep spouting this bullshit, but who cares? We're making shit tons of money. I mean, all these people are victims of the corporate structure in the same way that we all are, but they don't know it.
I wouldn't say that they're victims of necessarily the corporate structure. I would say that they're victims of our internet age, in that we have computers and algorithms that are set up to give you information that will get you stuck on that website, whether it be Facebook,
but they can Google factual information and find out whether or not that's true. I mean, they're choosing to believe the lies, and the companies that are feeding them those lies are doing it because it makes them money.
Well, again, with Google, it's the same thing. Google will give you search results based on your behavior and your demographics and your prior search history. So if you had prior searched for certain things, it will bring up the things that you want to see in the future. So it doesn't matter if you're looking for the truth, you're going to get the truth that you want, because that's how it works. So in some ways, you can't say that conservative voices or right-leaning voices are censored in that way, because they're actually amplified. I mean, we see that on Facebook all the time with some of the groups that are out there, with some of the posts that are shared out there. If it is a right-leaning thing, it's actually in some ways amplified, because it gets that emotion going, gets that conversation, not necessarily conversation, but that engagement that these algorithms see and say, oh, this is not necessarily radicalizing people, but it's radicalizing people. It's getting people to engage with this post. It's getting people to engage with this group. It's getting people engaged to look for this on Google. I'm going to give people more of this. And that's kind of what we're getting right now. And it adds to the confirmation bias that people have. And it adds to the cognitive dissonance that you see as well. And that, hey, all the stuff that I look for, everything that I see on my Facebook, everything I see on my Twitter, my Instagram, my Snapchat, my TikTok is telling me these things. But that one person that's outside of my bubble is showing different things. So,
have you guys ever tried to mess with your algorithm?
Yes, all the time.
I do it all the time. All the time. I don't want to just be fed things that I believe. You know, I think you should read what Trump says. Have a good laugh. Everyone should laugh before they go to sleep.
Thank you, guys. I want to move on to the next topic here, and I want to put this question over to Kylan. Actually, there was large speculation that that Mike Pence might invoke Section 4 of the 25th Amendment in the aftermath of the Capitol riots. Kylan, why do you think he resisted doing that?
So before I get into the why, let's get into the minutia of Section 4 of the 25th Amendment, which states that the Vice President initiates Section 4 of the 25th Amendment along with the majority of the cabinet to say that the President of the United States is unfit to discharge his duties as President, as Commander-in-Chief. At that point, the President can either agree with that assessment and leave and he'll lose his powers, or if the President objects to that, it then goes to Congress, where 2/3 of Congress has to vote, has to basically vote to say the President cannot discharge his duties, and then the President is removed. Now, as we know right now, it's practically impossible in today's polarized age for 2/3 of Congress to believe that the sky is blue or that water is wet. So now the reason why Mike Pence did not do the 25th Amendment or initiate that is actually political. Mike Pence right now, even though he's been a very good bootlicker for 4 years, Mike Pence still has a desire to one day run and be president of the United States. And so he's trying to tread a very fine political line. He didn't have the constitutional authority to overturn the results of the election. So he had to just make himself look bad in front of the maggots and actually do his constitutional duty. But at the same time, he doesn't want to throw Trump under the bus by initiating the 25th Amendment, because not only will that forever tarnish and destroy his nascent presidential aspirations before they even start, they could very well end up literally getting him hung. You think they wanted to hang him at the Capitol when they stormed the gates? Imagine how they would want to kill him if he actually initiated the 25th Amendment to try to remove the president. And so he's doing this to save his own ass, but also to try to save what he thinks could be a 2024 presidential campaign. Now, me speaking just individually, there's no way in God's green earth that I think that Mike Pence has any shot in hell of being president after licking Trump's boots for 4 years. I don't know what Mike Pence would have to offer the electorate except for being really good at quoting Bible verses and being a hypocrite. But I mean, since that's the Republican way, he may better yet do a job. But that's the reason why Mike Pence didn't initiate the 25th Amendment. Number one, math, but number two, to save his own ass.
Good answer. Thanks, Kyle.
I disagree a little bit. I don't think this was about saving his own ass. If you look just a day earlier to when he said his constitutional duty was not to unilaterally, or even that he had the power to unilaterally throw out electors and change the results of the election, he could have said nothing and just done his job. But instead he released a 2.5-page letter to the public as to why this was his constitutional duty. If he was worried about what people would think of him, he wouldn't have done that, knowing already how riled up the Trump base is. And that's why they were already saying, "Hey, Mike Pence." And they already broke into the Capitol building with some people trying to find Mike Pence to hang him. I don't really think it could have gotten much worse than that. And I don't think his lack of interest in the 25th Amendment has anything really to do with his future political ambitions. I think they're mostly shot at this point, at least as far as the Trump base is concerned. I think it has more to do with the futility of trying to enact the 25th Amendment because of the breakdown in Congress. It's not going to happen. I think you said numbers, and I think that's what you were referring to. It's not going to happen. Whatever's left of the cabinet, yeah, you can probably find half of whatever 4 people are left, right? Now that so many people have resigned or quit or resigned or been fired, but really,
or they were never confirmed in the first place,
or they were never confirmed, like the Homeland Security.
They were acting cabinet members.
Yeah, but basically, it's just not going to fucking happen. They're going to be lucky if they get 67 people to vote to convict in the impeachment trial. There's no way they were ever going to get 2/3 in both houses of Congress to
especially when
finalize the 25th Amendment.
So I think the point
147 Republicans not vote to certify the election in the House.
Exactly.
I think the point was more that if a majority of the cabinet actually says they want to remove him under Section 4 of the 25th Amendment, he's removed immediately, right?
I don't believe so. No, he gets to say, no, I am fit to serve.
Yes.
Right.
And then if he says, I am fit to serve, and we know that Trump would say he's fit to serve.
Then the
he has
vote
the best health in the world, right? So then it goes to Congress, and Congress makes the final call.
That's what I'm saying, though. But in the meantime, he is removed.
No.
No, he gets to say, no, I'm fit. I'm actually okay to.
Guys, that no, I am fit. Fuck you. It goes to Congress.
My understanding is that he is removed for the duration of time it takes for Congress to decide whether or not.
That's what I'm saying.
That's my understanding of the law. I could be wrong, but I've heard a couple things about that, and that is the implication that I got is that he is removed. He can make a claim that I am fit to serve, and then Congress decides.
At that point,
during that time, yeah.
At that point, the burden is on him to convince Congress to let him stay in his position. That was
for that duration of time, he's out.
Process. But that would be a quick process.
No, they can delay it. They can delay it up to 14 days.
They wouldn't. They wouldn't. There's
Congress could. Why wouldn't they? I mean, Nancy Pelosi, why wouldn't she? I mean,
I just don't think they will. They're not going to delay it when he's in office. What now? 6 more days? 5 more days?
Right. I mean, it's a moot point either way. But if that thing had happened and Trump said, no, I am fit, right? But he is out of office at that point. All Nancy Pelosi would have to say is, well, I'm going to wait the 2 weeks. And then we'll decide. And that 2 weeks, he's gone.
So it's just the perfect segue to the next point, actually. So the 25th Amendment didn't happen. It's not going to happen. But Trump did get impeached again, not too long ago, actually. And I guess I want to put this. I want to put this to an open question, actually. Since Biden is about to be sworn in, do you think impeachment is the right move at this point to heal the country? Yes or no?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
There's no other way.
I don't think it's
the right word.
Yeah, I wouldn't say healing, but it's definitely the right move because it shows Trump that it's more than just like a censorship, which is basically a slap on the hand. This is serious. This was really bad, and you helped make this happen.
If a Supreme Court justice can be rammed down our throats days before the election, then we can goddamn it, we can impeach Trump. There needs to be accountability. And I'll be damned if I'm going to listen to any Republican talk about unity. Where the fuck was unity when after the election for the past month and a half, you said that the election was rigged and false and fraudulent? That doesn't sound pretty unifying to me. Where's the unity when Republicans talk about Antifa and the left is trying to destroy your country and want to take away your guns and you won't have a country left? That doesn't sound pretty unifying to me. But now all of a sudden they want to talk about unity. Listening to Congress debate impeachment the other day made me sick with the hypocrisy. The hypocrisy dripped from their pores like sweat, like Cheeto dust. It just rolled off of their skin. You know, don't ever talk to me about unity. Madison Cawthorn and his crippled ass. And yes, I'm saying it.
Let's not say that. Let's not sink to their level. I'm going to sink to their level. Let's not do that. No, let's not do that.
You don't have to. I am. He can kiss my ass. They can all kiss my ass. I'm tired of being beat. Why the hell do we always got to go high and they can go low? I want to kick him in the balls. The great thing is he won't feel it, so screw it. It wouldn't matter anyway.
I don't think that's okay for us to say. I really don't think it's okay for us to say. I know, but I don't think we should be. I mean, it's able. That's really. I mean, it's not okay, Colin. I love you, but it's not okay.
Well, you know what? That's my prerogative. So
I understand.
That's my prerogative.
But I otherwise agree with you. I think the calls for healing is gaslighting.
It is. It is bullshit. And it's bullshit. You know, and there is no unity. There is no healing with these people. These people are traitors. All right, they're gaslighters. They're liars. They're grifters. They don't care about democracy. They don't care about civil rights. They don't care about human rights. It makes me think of one of my favorite movies, The Glorious Bastards. Nancy ain't got no humanity. I didn't go over here and jump out of a goddamn airplane to teach the Nazis anything about civilized. They're not civilized. All right, so it's like I'm so done with their calls for unity because they haven't done jack squat to unify this country over the last 4 years. They, we clean up all of their bullshit. We clean up all of their mess every single time. When they go low, we go high, and they still kick us in the balls. We offer our, they cut our hand off.
I agree with you, but I don't think we should stoop to that
so
level.
So I get it. Let's move on though. I want to go to the next question actually, and again, I'll leave this as an open question too. Do you think that impeachment distracts from Biden's agenda within the first 100 days? Do you think that we should wait to send the articles over to the Senate until after Biden's had his first 100 days, or do you think they should send it immediately?
Now,
I'm gonna say we have no choice. Basically, there's no choice. Our hand has been forced. So does it distract? Maybe a little bit. But at this point, I mean, we sent it to the Senate, and there's going to be a trial. That doesn't mean they can't take up other legislative duties. That doesn't mean that they can't vote on other things. And since now we have a majority in the Senate, I feel like we can push things through with more relative ease, even though it's a tentative or a shaky +0 majority, basically. But what we've got right now is a matter in which we had no choice but to impeach. That was the only possible thing we could do in order to impress upon Donald Trump and his cronies that this was a completely messed up thing. So, I mean, where do we go? I mean, what choice do we have? Yeah, it's gonna delay certain things. It's gonna delay some debate. It's gonna push the schedule back somewhat. But I don't really see any way that we could do things any differently, because this was an impeachable offense and it has to move forward.
So I get that.
I also have one moment.
Go ahead.
I'd like to sincerely apologize to our viewers. I got a little bit heated. Amanda and Jules are absolutely right. I have many people that I know that are handicapped, that are special needs. And, to any of our viewers who have family that may be, physically disabled, what I said was wrong. And, I think all of us at some points in our life get heated in the heat of the moment, and your emotions run wild. And so I want to apologize to anyone who was offended by my commentary. I ask for your forgiveness. I am not proud of that, and I sincerely apologize with all of my heart, and I do mean that.
And we appreciate that, Kylan. And it takes a lot of guts to own up to a mistake, especially during a live broadcast. It's not easy, and sometimes we get heated and say things we don't need, but we appreciate that, and I'm sure the audience does too. So thank you.
Right is right and wrong is wrong.
Exactly. Let's go to Amanda next. Go ahead. Or I'm sorry, Anna.
Anna.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually, well, I guess agree and disagree. I think it's his second impeachment, like his first impeachment, 3 years, 4 years too late. So I guess for Amanda, what do you think? Do you think he had any other behavior that could have got him impeached sooner? Because right now, to me, and maybe some of you guys agree or disagree, it feels like the plane has landed, the pilot hasn't said we have arrived, and we're taking our seatbelt off. It really feels like the risk is gone. Trump is almost out, and people are only impeaching him to save their careers. So I feel like he should have been impeached a long time ago. Sure. But I don't know if I mean, I think his behavior hasn't been appropriate, but I don't know if his behavior has been impeachable. What do you think, Amanda?
I mean, there were so many things that happened earlier in his term that I thought were impeachable that they should have taken action on. But like I said in the last podcast, I was very concerned about impeaching a first-term president who at the time was still extremely popular and had, the path to re-election laid before him unobstructed. And so I was, even when they did impeach him the first time, I was like, this is bad, don't do it. Like yes, it needs to happen and it should have happened earlier, but he's going to get reelected and this is going to be his boon to, look at all these do nothing Democrats only focusing on impeachment and not the business of the people. And I'm so great and I won. And, it's all fodder for the reelection campaign. In terms of impeaching him now, I do agree, like in terms of Trump himself, it's almost a moot point. He's going to be gone. The most that they can really do to him, even if he's convicted, is he gets convicted, whoop-de-doo. They have to do a sort of separate vote to say he can't ever hold office again. But I think the bigger and more important reason to impeach him is because if this is not an impeachable offense, what is? You know,
Exactly.
This is about setting a historic precedent. It's not like, we know he's not going to be held accountable. Like realistically, he's fine. He's going to go to Mar-a-Lago and argue with his neighbors about whether or not it's a residence. Like, he'll be fine in Miami. But the real issue is the next time this happens with another president.
I just
What
feel
can we look
like there's so many things that he has done that for me I wouldn't allow my boyfriend's 6-year-old child to behave like that. So why would we allow our president to behave like that? So I'm just like baffled by the fact that, okay, great, he's been impeached twice, but I feel like it should have happened a long time ago. Like, I understand it's his reelection. I understand all of that. I just feel like we've given him so much leniency that the next time a president behaves like that, he's gonna take a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. I feel like we should have stopped it at the root.
I agree, but I think that is why it's important that they did this impeachment for this particular action. If this had happened at any time in his presidency, they should impeach him for it, even if it's on his very last day.
Agreed.
So I think I do agree with both of you, Amanda and Anna, that this should have happened a long time ago. It's kind of, that's kind of a moot point at this rate. There's no sense in really arguing about it anymore. But will this take away from Joe Biden's legislative agenda? It's possible. It is absolutely possible. But I feel like we can't delay this because of the fact that, this is America. This is 2021, and the attention span of goldfish. So we need to make this happen, and it has to happen. It has to go through the trial in the Senate. There has to be a conviction, and he needs to face, basically face the music for what he's done over the last, I want to say 4 years, but it's really over the last week. But I think it is important too. Like, I have a lot of people, I've had conversations with multiple people who basically tell me like, well, what's the point? He's going to be gone in 2 weeks anyway. I'm like, well, the point is that if we don't punish him for this, what's going to stop the next wannabe authoritarian who is maybe just a little bit more censored and a little bit more nuanced from coming in here and trying to do the same type of crap when we haven't pushed back? So that's what needs to happen. We need to set that historical precedent. And yeah, there might be a situation where the next guy comes in and he's going to try to take a little bit more. Well, that's when I would expect Congress not to pull a Susan Collins and say, well, we impeached him in the House. He's learned his lesson. Obviously, that's not the case. That type of crap will never happen. It's like, it's like someone commits murder and they get charged and acquitted. And it's like, well, he got charged, so he learned his lesson. He's not going to kill anybody again, and gets out and kills 3 people. So that's what has to happen right now. And we need to have a legislative body in this country that is more beholden to us, to people, and, a body that isn't going to look at the voting base and say, I don't really give a shit. They're not giving me any money. So, overturn Citizens United, get money out of politics, have publicly funded elections, and give us our voices back. And then maybe we can, stop this kind of crap from happening in the future. But again, historical precedent has to be set, and it has to be set, I would say, within the next 3 months, that this type of shit will not stand.
Well said. Go ahead, Anthony.
I think it'd be good if we had a historical precedent that this was a real problem that we have now, that the stories we'd rather tell about ourselves are not going on now. These are the stories that we're living in now. And if we want to have a different story in the future, then we have to admit, hey, thank you, President Trump, for putting all of our problems on display. Perhaps we can confront them if we have to admit to them.
Well said.
Yeah.
You're getting a silent round of applause from Tyler there.
As Tyler's
a muted round of applause.
Yeah, so you wouldn't have to hear the clap.
I mean, I'm fine with that. Let's move
He's a
on to
professional.
Jules, and then I want to start winding down here. Go ahead, Jules.
So there's a couple things that are going to happen. I mean, so we're going to see the Senate take up the impeachment trial. There's actually some disagreement among legal scholars whether or not a former president can still be impeached. I think the consensus is probably, and it seems like it's going to happen either way. So it doesn't really matter. And one of the stipulations of conviction would be that Trump is barred from office. However, there's another way that Trump could be barred from office, which is the 14th Amendment, in which all they need is a majority vote in both the House and the Senate. Say he is not fit to serve in federal office. They vote, simple majority, and that's it. And in order to overturn that, they would need a 2/3 majority from the Senate and the House. So even if he does not get convicted, which actually is, I'm unsure. For once, I'm actually unsure whether or not the Senate might not convict him, or they might. Mitch McConnell has said he is willing to hear the legal arguments, and that's actually fairly unusual, simply because he has in the past been staunchly pro-Trump no matter what. So we're seeing a possibility that there might be a conviction. If McConnell goes, so goes probably possibly enough other Republicans who would follow him to convict, and then he would be barred. Or the Democrats would only have to invoke the 14th Amendment and vote, and we'd have the votes to bar him from holding office again anyway. That would probably be more controversial, but we actually have a couple avenues to punish him on either end.
Thank you, Jules. Yeah, actually, that was going to go into my next and final question of the night, which is, of the Republicans in the Senate, who is the most likely to vote to convict? And I'll leave that open too.
Anna, do you want to take that one?
Romney.
Romney's number one. I think that's the most likely.
I'm so sorry. What was the question?
Which Republicans are most likely to vote to convict? Which Republican senators are most likely to vote?
I was reading the chat here. Say that again.
Oh, it's okay. Which Republican senators are most likely to vote to convict Trump?
Honestly, I feel like, you know what? No comment. I don't know. I want to say none, but I'm hoping that realistically I'm wrong. So no comment. I don't know.
That felt like a really intense buildup that left me disappointed.
Welcome to Dating Men.
Lisa Murkowski.
Oh, ouch.
Lisa Murkowski. Susan Collins.
Mitt Romney.
Ben Sass. Mitt Romney.
Vlad.
I was actually gonna say Mitt Romney, and I was gonna say a lot of other Republicans in the Senate are gonna tie their votes to what Mitch McConnell does. If Mitch McConnell
100%.
votes to convict, there's going to be a snowball effect of other Republicans that are going to go that way.
But that's why you can't
they need 17 Republicans.
But that's really why you can't say, because they follow Mitch.
Well,
and
that's true. That's true. There are a lot of them do. A lot of them absolutely do. There's a small faction of senators, I think, like the ones that we just said, Romney, Murkowski, who will actually think for themselves. The rest are kind of like lemmings that fall in line with Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
And they only need 17 Republicans to convict.
So do you think
yes,
if Mitch McConnell signals his support, do you think 17 Republicans follow his lead?
Yes.
Possibly.
Yeah. And really, we only need 13 plus, outside of the 4 we've already mentioned who are going to think for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not even 13, 12. So if
Because it's
If
what is it?
Mittens-
It's Murkowski,
Mittens-
Collins, Romney, Ben
Mittens.
Sass.
if Mitch makes 5, so if Mitch votes, they need 12 more people.
Okay,
Which-
so how many
Have
judge
to-
appointments do we have to give Mitch McConnell in order to get justice?
None, because he is no longer Senate Majority Leader. Thank you, Georgia.
I think Anthony is referring to a quid pro quo.
Yep. Hey, Vlad, go ahead and take a victory lap. For those of you who don't know, Vlad called Georgia far before any of us called Georgia, so he gets the victory lap for this one. I'll give him that. So
I'll take my bows off the air.
Whatever.
Oh, and just because this wasn't mentioned at the beginning, did anybody notice how before January 6th, Loeffler and Perdue were saying that they were going to call for recounts and they were not going to concede? Yet after January 6th, there have been no recounts and they very readily conceded.
I was actually fully expecting them to go into the Trump playbook and just refuse to concede for months.
Deny, rigged
and call
election,
for recounts and
won.
signature audits and all that crap. So
Nothing.
all right, folks, we've reached the end of my questions. Actually, I don't have a fun topic for tonight, but one thing, because we're on YouTube, you guys are familiar with the thumbnails that people put on YouTube, right? The surprised faces, like, oh my God. Like, I figure in lieu of a fun topic this time, why don't we just spend the end of the broadcast just making faces for a thumbnail? Does that sound good?
Oh gosh, for how long? 10 seconds? 5 seconds?
I don't think
please God, no.
I don't think
Oh,
we need
no.
that. Just everybody, I would say on the count of 3, just make the face that you want to appear in the thumbnail, okay? Jules, hey, you're not weaseling out of this, man. You're not weaseling out of this.
Turn your camera back on.
Alex, are you capturing this?
Huh?
I said, are
bet
you
your
going to
ass I am.
screenshot this?
Yeah.
Oh,
All right, Jules. Okay, is everybody ready?
Yeah.
On the count of 3, all right? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, and we're done. That's all we
That
need.
was great.
Because I'm going to go back and I'll edit that one and screen cap it later. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of Project SIP's inaugural YouTube broadcast here. I'd like to thank you all for watching. We had a peak viewership of 16 viewers, which is actually very great for our first podcast on a whole nother platform. So I wanted to thank you guys for watching. For those of you who stuck with us in the comments, thanks so much. We appreciate you. And as always, everybody,